What's up, Ryan Key here, and today I'm going to walk through exactly how to go about setting up ChatGPT as your new job coach. Look, the question you want to ask yourself here is, what do you need to do to become a rock star at your new job that you just got in the next 90 days? Now, if you think about it, when I was born 40 years ago, that would have meant maybe the encyclopedia, going to the public library, asking for a book, having the librarian help you identify a book to read, or going to college and taking a class on something. As I was entering the workforce 20 years ago and Google was around, suddenly it became much easier and faster for us to get access to that information instead of going to the library. In the last 10 years, as blogging and podcasting and online publishing of articles took over, instead of having to read an entire book, I might be able to read just a blog post on a topic or something like that. And Google would give me access to those web pages. Now, with ChatGPT, we enter a new phase of this, giving us a lot more power, not just to find the information that we might want to know about, but to actually take that information and personalize it, customize it, or adjust it for our unique setting, so that instead of having to read a book and then having to figure out how to apply it in a given circumstance, in a given size of company, in a given industry, I can now take and use ChatGPT to take those concepts and adjust them and give them back to me based off of the industry I'm in. This is super, super powerful. And so, one of the biggest things to keep in mind here is, as a new hire, just because it would be in the best interest of your employer, your boss, your manager, to properly train you and teach you on how to do your job the best way, most of the time they're simply not organized enough. They don't have the time. They don't have the attention to detail to do it. They don't have the follow through, whatever the case may be. And so I'm going to show you how instead that you can take power over this on your own, that you can set up your own coach using ChatGPT, that you can feed it information from your company website, from your training, from your manuals, from interviewing your boss, your managers, your coworkers. Feed it that information, then have it become your coach in those first 90 days, not just to understand what you're supposed to do each day from a specific task level, but to actually understand the greater context of what your job and role is, number one. Number two, to give you the ability to investigate and research and gather and understand deeper knowledge about your organization outside of your role. Things that impact you, things that you impact, the overall concept, strategy, mission, vision, values of your company. And then finally, to be able to expand your horizons and your understanding outside of your given company into the broader industry, into the competitive landscape, into the customer landscape and journey, really to make yourself less tactical doing what you're told and more strategic, being able to figure out what you should be doing and how to outline it, how to create a project, how to become and step into that role at a much higher level. When you think about those steps that you have to take as you elevate yourself, whether it's in a new job or in an existing job, we have to first master being able to do the job, do the task and role. Then we've got to move up to the point where we can actually understand and decide what to do. And then we can move up to where we can actually start managing people doing the job. And then we can move from there into deciding the strategy and the overall concept of what we're doing and becoming much more of a strategic manager or something along those lines in cross collaboration and expanding across the company. But we have to start and climb that ladder one step at a time. The cool thing is, once again, I said, ChatGPT is this amazing resource that gives us the ability to research this, to feed it research that we've done and interviews we've conducted, to brainstorm about what it means and what our options are, to roadmap and simulate and kind of like game plan what we could do, what would happen if, all those types of things. And then finally to create content, create projects, create roadmaps, create responses and PowerPoints, you name it. ChatGPT has this huge power. But the key here is to remember we're thinking about it like we're collaborating with it. It is our mentor and our coach and our partner in this. It isn't there to do it for us. And that's really the core thing as we get into this. So there's 5 main steps in setting up ChatGPT. This isn't just about taking a prompt, pasting it in, and expecting it to give you back a finished product. Instead, as we're collaborating with it, we need to walk through the process. Number one, we need to tell it what type of coach we want it to be. We need to explain to it what it is, how we want it to act. Number two, we need to feed it our education, our work history, where we came from. We need to feed it information about what we were hired to do, the job description, the company information, et cetera, et cetera. We need to explain who we were hired by, meaning who's our manager, what is the company, what industry, what were we tasked to do, who is it we're doing it for. And then finally, we need to ask it, what do we want help with? That number 5 is where normally a prompt would come in. If you create a prompt that says, write for me a plan for, write for me a response to, write for me, an email sequence for, all of those prompts will not be very valuable. The response back won't be great if you skip these first 4 steps. But if we want it to act like a coach, a mentor, we got to knock these down. So I'm going to actually jump in and show you on the blog post that you're reading. You most likely there is a coach attached to it, and you can follow the steps of whatever it is. You can take and adjust those to make it a different type of coach, a different style. But let me show you, because I actually took and ran this setup. So you can see my very first kind of intro. I'm starting a brand new conversation. I'm giving it a name. And my very first prompt, I want you to be my new job coach or mentor. I want you to accelerate, X, Y, and Z. You can literally copy and paste this right off my blog post and plug it in. It's going to come back and ask me a series of questions. It's saying, hey, I can totally do that, but if you want my information, my suggestions, my tips, my tricks, my collaboration to be valuable, you need to give me some more information. What job, and again, so you can take this job portion and you feed it in your job description. You might need to ask your boss, what are the long-term and short-term goals of this job? What are my, keep that in mind that the job description may only have this part. You might have to ask, which you should be asking before you start the job about these things. You can send an email to your new boss and say, hey, I want to get prepared before I start on the first day. Could you give me an idea of, and ask them some of these questions. You could also Google them. What are the key KPIs for this type of job in this type of industry? Feed it any tools or processes, what software you're using, etc., what challenges. Now, all of this information, you can give it as much as you possibly can, as much as you have access to, or you can feed it in later. Just understand, the more of this information you give it, the more personalized and customized its responses are going to be. So I went ahead and pasted in a job description that I found off of an ad. Clearly, that's going to give me more questions to answer, because the description doesn't include all the information about this company's evolution, about what their clients are like, about their products or services. Suddenly I have more answers that I need to give it. I could copy and paste it from the web. I use this web access plugin here that allows me to actually run a Google search, and that Google search pulled this information back in. I think you can see what the Google search was, but it basically pulled in information about this employer, about their products, about all that kind of stuff off of their website, and then restates for me. I basically said research, complyauto.com, their primary customers, verticals, their unique selling proposition. Again, this was to pull in information about that company. Now, I could have asked it to pull in information about their culture and values from Indeed reviews, from Glassdoor reviews, from anything like that, depending on what I was trying to understand. The key here, though, is now I can say, look, I'm going to be this role. I'm going to be working with these types of people. This is what the structure's like. This is what's being expected of me. This is what, etc. And it's now going to give me back information about how to take all the stuff I fed it and make something out of it. It's going to give me different ideas about how it can help me, what I'm going to need to figure out, etc. You follow along here. Given the gathered data information above, can we frame an effective strategy for my first 90 days? Again, this is taking control over, yes, if they were going to train me, that would be awesome, and I would definitely listen to that, and I would definitely check those off, but I can come up with my own roadmap or plan, and it's actually going to make me appear much more organized. Now, if your new hire or if your new boss gave you a 90-day plan and a checklist and things to check off, you could copy and paste it right into this, say, here's what my boss gave me, expand it, do more with it. And so this gives me back information about what I should do and how I should do it over the first 90 days in this job. I ask it, I love this tip. If you listen to any of my videos, you're going to hear me go back to create a list of interview questions that I can use to gather the information. The reason I do that is then I can hop on Zoom, or I can go face to face, pull out my phone, download my Otter, set up the Otter app and just record it and transcribe that conversation and paste it right back into ChatGPT. And so generally speaking, I'm going to be asking it to give me a list of questions. So because this is a marketing job, I don't want to just show up and say, hey, what marketing do you need done? I actually want to show up and ask questions of the different people that I'm going to collaborate with or work with, or who are going to be impacted by my work. And so ChatGPT gave me a list of names of people that I should interview. It gave me information as far as questions to ask when I talk to them. I would get on Zoom with Otter signed in. I would just take the Zoom recording, convert it to audio, get it transcribed to text, and then push it back into ChatGPT to just feed it more and more information. So when I said ChatGPT had the ability to research, a lot of times we think we're going to ask it and it's going to give us the answers. Instead, think about this more of asking what it needs to know, because it knows everything about everything. It just doesn't know specifically about you, about your job, about your employer, about what you're trying to accomplish. And so by using this, what would you need to know to personalize or customize, and then feeding that information back in, it basically forces ChatGPT to focus very much like a coach would do, like a mentor would do. And so this gives me back a whole bunch of information that I could go and do this type of research. This gives me ideas of, hey, I'm not going to interview. I want to actually do research. So what kind of research could I do on my own about different stuff? It's going to give me, now I could ask it to create a series of Google searches, and then I could go out and run those searches, or I could run these things right inside of the web access. And at that point, right, I end up with some initial prompts. This is, I think this is the right one. Yep. This is, once I fed it all this information, how could you help me? And so I might come in as a marketing person in this new job and say, help me gather feedback for customer insights, or analyze our competitors, or give me some collaborative content, or whatever the case may be. All of these are prompts that, to be honest, are not a do this for me and get it back, but much more about, will you help me with this? And I will end up running the same exact flow. What do you need to know? What type of interview questions can I use to gather that information? Hey, here's the information. All right, now let's roadmap out this project, my response, whatever it is I'm going to do. And that idea of running this constant loop of research, I think we actually had it back on here, and you can think about it, this constant loop right here. This isn't just the 4 things it can do. This is normally my loop, right? Research information about this, brainstorm what our options are, simulate or kind of war game out what is the best one, or what the pros and cons of them would be. All right, I've picked one. Now create a plan, a roadmap, a project, whatever the case may be. And so I'll continue to run those 4 things each time. Research normally has to do with, what do you need to know? Brainstorm has to do with, here's the information I gathered from the internet, from my team, from the website, from documentation. Now let's brainstorm something about it and come up with some options of how we can approach it or solve it, respond to it. Simulate, kind of war game this out. Tell me, how can I identify the best of these options? What will the pros and cons of them be? What would it take to do it, etc. And then once I've made my decision, create, write, roadmap, outline, whatever the case may be, of what I need to do next. Whether that's a presentation for my boss, whether it's a pitch document for my boss, whether it's actually, create for me a short pilot program, create for me a short proof project, anything like that will really allow you to then create a project and know that you can run it, because you've got ChatGPT on your side that has now been trained about your specific job, your specific company, your specific industry, specifically what strategy you're trying to execute, or whatever the case may be. So if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. You can reach me at ryan@refer.io. Also, make sure you subscribe to the GBT for Work channel. That's the other email. You can find me at ryan@gbtforwork.io. But make sure you subscribe. We post lots and lots of these videos, and make sure you share them. Otherwise, we'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot.